Let me take a minute to introduce everyone to Dr. Chris Dostal. He is the director of the Conservation Research Laboratory, director of the Analytical Archaeology Lab, the director of the Center for Maritime Archaeology and Conservation, and an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at Texas A&M University. And we have worked very closely with Chris and all of his colleagues at Texas A&M University. Just wanted to get Chris's perspective on the project and on Alexandria's unique maritime heritage. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Chris, tell me briefly about what you learned about these ships by documenting and modeling them.
What's interesting is this time period isn't really well known. There's not too many archaeological examples. And so through this particular method of documentation, we have every nook and cranny. We understand these ships better than the people that built them. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but we have probably more details than they do. So this has been, very luckily for what just happened to be on your waterfront, this has represented a huge gap in the knowledge of ship design in your part of the world in this particular time period. We just don't have much. So it's been really terrific to kind of get a sense of what people were doing. My favorite part of looking at these ships in particular, or at least site 159, 155, and the Indigo ship, is to see just how absolutely carefree they were with the amount of lumber they had at hand. Like you could barely slide a piece of paper between the individual frames. They're so heavily built, and that goes away very quickly as the forests start to be depleted.
So there's like an environmental story embedded in these ships, in addition to sort of learning more about the people who built them and the time period in which they were built.
Yeah, of course. And as you guys pointed out, with the way 159 was, now you know the slope of the shoreline when it was deposited.
Right. Yeah. 159 is the one that is on the south end of Robinson Landing and right there at the edge of and under Wolf Street.
Yeah.
So
that represents, I think, the worst irony of this whole project is that the other three ships were intentionally cut in half when they were deposited, and then this is the only one that wasn't. We had to cut it in half.
Right. it was eventually. In the realm of nautical archaeology, just how unique are these four ships, and how do they contribute to our understanding of maritime heritage in the New World?
Well, so this is a really interesting time period because we say this a lot, but shipbuilding is a very conservative practice, especially improvements made to shipbuilding technologies. When I say improvements, I mean increases in efficiencies. These happen very, very slowly because you don't want to be the shipwright that has a really crazy idea and you try it out and then everyone dies. So really until around the turn of the 19th century, we don't see the kind of really rapid technological changes that are occurring with the invention of steam and whatnot. So these kind of represent the last batch of traditionally designed ships in the eastern coast of North America, kind of following that European ship design. But we see the kind of things that they were doing to adapt to the different types of waters that they're going to have to use or navigate rather. Like I said, the abundance of timber. There's just a lot of interesting little design things that we haven't seen in other places. Additionally, a lot of times what we have, because there are so few examples archaeologically from this time period, we study ship treatises and shipping records and things like that to get a sense. But once you see how someone actually put something together, you might have a theoretical concept of what a ship would look like, but you don't get to see like the little wedges they have to use because they cut too much off of a piece they're making. These kind of the adaptations that actually would have worked.
So what was the process of creating these models like? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did you hit your head against the wall? Or
So it was not easy. I'll start with that. As you recall, the scanning process is pretty brutal after a while.
Right.
But it's very iterative. So what we did is we scan the timbers and then take those scans, process them, and put them together in a 3D space, which, as you've seen the 3D versions of the models in digitally, and then it's kind of like a puzzle that needs to go back together different from the way it was taken apart, because these ships would not have sailed the way they were found, obviously. So we have to kind of take the timbers and kind of tuck everything back up and put it in the place where it should be before we can start pulling out what it could represent. And then we took those scan files, 3D printed them, and then Glenn Greco, our model maker, took all of those and then kind of rebuilt the ship as they would have done it with the pieces that we have, and then lay out like long pieces of wood to kind of simulate the curve of a real ship in order to reconstruct what we don't have.
It really is a unique approach to showing how archaeologists do the work we do, which is we find a piece of something and we use historical documents and comparative examples and other forms of research to make our best interpretation of what the past was like. You've just done it on such a grand scale. We're usually dealing with ceramic sherds and wine bottle glass. So this is just on a much larger scale,
Yeah.
right?
You guys definitely take the cake for large artifacts in the East Coast.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those personal insights into the project.
Yeah, it's been such a cool project to work with you guys with.
Yeah, well, thanks for all your work and all your insights and for your time today.